What impact will the federal budget have here on southern Vancouver Island? Has the City of Victoria found a legal way to stop homeless camping? And should there be armed guards on BC ferries? Those are among the topics we're going to discuss in the next 15 minutes. I'm Alan Perry. Welcome to the weekly opinion panel on The Daily here on Shaw TV. Joining us this week from CFAX 1070 Radio News, Steve Duffy.
Thanks for having me back, Alan.
The CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, Bruce Carter.
Great to be here.
And from Check News, reporter Mary Griffin.
Hi, Alan.
Well, off the top, the federal budget is out, a decidedly unconservative federal budget here. Huge amounts of spending potentially. The big question, Bruce, is how much of it is going to filter down to Greater Victoria and southern Vancouver Island?
Well, during that budget consultation process, we were looking for three things. We were looking for access to capital, which we got. We were looking for infrastructure spending, which we got. And the other thing that we're looking for a Victoria perspective was social housing, and we got that as well. So generally with the budget, we're pretty happy. Now we need to get that money flowing and get it to Victoria, and that'll be a real challenge.
But the big catch is that a lot of this federal funding appears to be tied, Mary, to whether or not the province and the municipalities can match it.
I know, and you're looking at a time where you're looking at decreasing revenues for all levels of government. I think that may have been, I got the gist that was quite unexpected, that they were going to expect dollar for dollar matching. So I know after speaking with the Mayor, Dean Fortin, that there's a long wish list of projects the region hopes to go ahead on. So, you know, if they have to match funds, it's going to be very interesting. And we're looking at a provincial election a few months down the road. And I think the Premier is hinting at deficit spending as well, too, which is going to be quite a departure. So it's going to be interesting. There's a huge, long wish list of things anyway, and now governments are looking at creating jobs from these projects. But if they have to match dollars, it's going to be interesting to see how many of them actually get off the ground.
And Steve, the province can afford to match dollars, as Mary said, because of a deficit and because there's an election coming, but it's the local municipalities. What local municipality here can afford to provide funding for something that wasn't already planned?
Well, I guess the answer to that in a lay term would be, why don't the municipalities band together as a CRD without using the A word, and maybe combine their resources that way. That way you can get work done on these projects that need to be done rather than divvying it up in 13 different ways.
You were here a few weeks ago, Bruce, and talked about the one big potential was the Island Corridor for the ENN Railway.
Right. I mean, that's a good project. And I think, you know, we need to look at these projects from an economic stimulus perspective. You know, can we get funding for the new Admirals Road Bridge in Saanich? Yes, we can. Is it going to be built anyway? Yes. So what is the economic stimulus piece? I mean, some of the pieces that we look at that will actually help the economy, for instance, the extension of the runway, the changes at Ogden Point Terminal so they can allocate the larger cruise ships, the work to expand the Vancouver Island Technology Park, because that builds both human infrastructure and the infrastructure to support high tech, and those will have longer term benefits. Some of these other projects that are already on the books and sort of ready to go and funded, Spencer Road Interchange is another. You know, would it be nice to have a gift of federal money? Yes. Is that economic stimulus? I'm not sure. It's going to happen anyway.
And the big one, Mary, that everyone here in Victoria is waiting for, sewage treatment.
That's
right. Several years down the road, so it doesn't qualify anyway.
I know, and you know, it's when you talk with the politicians before the budget, they were interested in knowing, is that money going to be included in the federal budget? No, it doesn't look like it. So, you know, I wouldn't bet my paycheck if that's going to go ahead in the next couple of years, because the budget is $1.5 billion and a shovel hasn't been dug into the ground yet. So, yeah. That's interesting. Well,
speaking of no shovel in the ground yet, it's been announced this week, and this is in Langford, Skirt Mountain. Now, this is 3,200 new units of housing. This is the mountain just to the right before you get to Goldstream Park. Steve, they've announced plans. It's 15 to 25 years. Is this a good time to be announcing this to help revive the economy, or is this just dreaming?
Well, maybe a bit of both, but, you know, we discussed about interest rates going down to the lowest point in years, and you know, people would be fools not to jump on this and take advantage of that. But of course, everything's in a freeze now because of the downturn. So I guess you got to weigh your options. And of course, there are those who oppose these massive developments, but others say it's revenue generating and it's good for the communities down the long term.
Well, now on to Bruce's favorite topic, another decision this week from the BC Supreme Court in the homeless camping case. Victoria City Council reacting very swiftly to the dismissal of charges. They've brought in a new bylaw, which is what the judge said they should have done the first time. Does this solve it now, Bruce?
Well, you know, I don't think it's going to solve it. I think that, you know, we have some significant activists out there that are going to continue to cost the community hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal costs that we could be spending towards solving this homeless problem because they want to protest and they want to be able to camp anywhere else. Don't think it's in the public interest. We need to address the problems of homelessness, and tents anywhere that somebody wants to put them is not an answer.
Whether or not you agree with David Johnson and the other homeless advocates, I think it really put the issue of homelessness on the front page, because I was mentioning that if you go and, as we do when we're reporting, go ask the people on the street, what's the number one issue in Victoria? And time again, it's homelessness. So at least it's forefront and we're actually doing something about it. I think probably I agree with the recent editorial in the TC that City Council erred. They should have gone back to the drawing board and drafted a new bylaw. Instead, we've had to go to court and go through all of this. But they've done the right thing, drafted a new bylaw, amended it to restrict the camping. But at least people are talking about it, and it appears it's something we've been talking about for so long. Some action is happening. That's right.
But I think when you start to talk about the debate, which is, should people camp somewhere and what the housing looks like, you miss getting back to those core issues where, the majority of those people have either mental health or addiction problems, and we need to get the treatment services for that. Now, we're opening detox beds today, I understand, at Royal Jubilee, and that's good, but it's a drop in the bucket. We still have to do much, much more in order to treat those things. And we've actually been moved way off the mark on this. We need to treat mental health and addictions to solve our homeless problem.
And the interesting thing, Steve, because you park in the Centennial Square Parkade and walk over to CFAX in the wee hours of the morning, Centennial Square has been left out of the banned areas for homeless camping.
And that was the focal point for the protests over the winter, camping under the tree in the green space. And I think maybe the city, in a very shrewd move, decided to omit that and let the tents go there if necessary, because then they would be out there for the public to see and the public to frown upon.
As we get ready for the appeal 5 weeks from now, we'll see where that one goes. Well, another story that's raised a lot of eyebrows this week was a security expert has recommended we have an armed guard on every BC ferry on a major route to prevent it from attack. Now, the Times columnist, Jack Knox, and what I thought was a rather brilliant editorial, so this is one more example, Bruce, of this post-9/11 terrorism sort of running rampant. Not terrorism, but the fears of it running rampant.
Paranoia.
Yeah.
Well, I think when you're talking about armed guards, you really need to have a look at threat levels and what intelligence you have and sort of what's out there. I think DC Ferries has some work to do around security on their vessels, and that has to do a lot, to be quite honest, with physical and operational security, not armed guards. We've seen the same sort of thing working in airlines, where you secure bridges and those types of things. A lot of that work can be done to move forward. Whether or not you need to have police officers on there or not should depend on what's going on, and perhaps during the Olympics there should be.
If you compare our ferries to the Washington State Ferry that leaves from downtown Victoria, there is a substantial level of security that is non-existent at BC Ferries. You cannot simply walk on to these. There's a secure area. Yes. They do searches.
But that's
and
because it's a border.
Yeah. That's right. No,
yeah.
But the comparison is quite shocking. But do we go to the level of armed guards? That seems dramatic overkill, actually.
These are the same people, Steve, that said that we should also be searching everybody going on board the seaplanes, because what are they going to do?
Who knows? It's a little case, I think, of paranoia running a bit rampant, but we do have our drug-sniffing beagle at the BC ferry terminals. So kudos to that,
And there is the issue of bloggers having gone through secure areas on BC ferries and just open up doors that should be secure, and with a key lock as well, too, and they've been able to walk through. And so there is work to be done, I think, but going to the level of armed guards, I think that's...
I think you also need to look at the practicality. Let's remember that we're putting hundreds of cars with tanks full of gas onto BC ferries. There are lots of hazards there, and there are lots of things that can be done.
We had a fire earlier this week on board where they had to evacuate the ship. That's a much
and I would argue that the fire hazard and the dangerous good hazard is much more something that should be dealt with than there is the security and terrorist threat.
Yeah, we could put a firefighter. And now that's not a shot against the BC Ferries employees, because they are all highly trained in
Right. If you look at the risks that are out there, there's probably much more of a risk of a fire than there is of some other things happening.
My thanks to this week's panelists from CFAX 1070 Radio News, Steve Duffy.
Thank you again, Alan.
From the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, their CEO, Bruce Carter.
Always a pleasure, Alan.
And from Check News reporter Mary Griffin.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks for making us a part of your Super Bowl weekend. And so it goes.